Chapter 9, Sections 4 and 5 of A Modern Utopia. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A Modern Utopia by H.G. Wells. Chapter 9, Sections 4 and 5. "I follow the common rule, as many men do," said my double, answering my allusion to his uniform almost apologetically. "But my own work is, in its nature, poetic. There is much dissatisfaction with our isolation of criminals upon islands, and I am analysing the psychology of prison officials, and criminals in general, with a view to some better scheme. I am supposed to be ingenious with expedients in this direction. Typically, the samurai are engaged in administrative work. Practically, the whole of the responsible rule of the world is in their hands. All our head teachers and disciplinary heads of colleges, our judges, barristers, employers of labor beyond a certain limit, practicing medical men, legislators, must be samurai, and all the executive committees, and so forth, that play so large a part in our affairs, are drawn by lot exclusively from them. The order is not hereditary. We know just enough of biology and the uncertainties of inheritance to know how silly that would be, and it does not require an early consecration, or novitiate, or ceremonies and initiations of that sort. The samurai are, in fact, volunteers. Any intelligent adult in a reasonably healthy and efficient state may, at any age after 25, become one of the samurai, and take a hand in the universal control. Provided he follows the rule. Precisely. Provided he follows the rule. I've heard the phrase voluntary nobility. Well, that was the idea of our founders. They made a noble and privileged order, open to the whole world. No one could complain of an unjust exclusion, for the only thing that could exclude from the order was unwillingness or inability to follow the rule. But the rule might easily have been made exclusive of special lineages and races. That wasn't their intention. The rule was planned to exclude the dull, to be unattractive to the base, and to direct and coordinate all sound citizens of good intent. And it succeeded? As well as anything finite can. Life is still imperfect, still a thick felt of dissatisfaction and perplexing problems, but most certainly the quality of all its problems has been raised, and there has been no war, no grinding poverty, not half the disease, and an enormous increase of the order, beauty, and resources of life since the samurai, who began as a private aggressive cult, won their way to the rule of the world." "I would like to have that history," I said. "I expect there was fighting?" He nodded. "But first, tell me about the rule." "The rule aims to exclude the dull and base altogether, to discipline the impulses and emotions, to develop a moral habit and sustain a man in periods of stress, fatigue, and temptation, to produce the maximum cooperation of all men of good intent, and in fact to keep all the samurai in a state of moral and bodily health and efficiency. It does as much of this as well as it can, but of course, like all general propositions, it does not do it in any case with absolute precision. On the whole, it is so good that most men who, like myself, are doing poetic work, and who would be just as well off without obedience, find a satisfaction in adhesion. At first, in the military days, it was a trifle hard and uncompromising. It had rather too strong an appeal to the moral prig and harshly righteous man, but it has undergone, and still undergoes, revision and expansion, and every year it becomes a little better adapted to the need of a general rule of life that all men may try to follow. We now have a whole literature, with many very fine things in it, written about the rule." He glanced at a little book on his desk, took it up as if to show it to me, then put it down again. "The rule consists of 3 parts. There is the list of things that qualify, the list of things that must not be done, and the list of things that must be done. Qualification exacts a little exertion as evidence of good faith, and it is designed to weed out the duller dull and many of the base. Our schooling period ends now about 14, and a small number of boys and girls, about 3%, are set aside then as unteachable, as in fact nearly idiotic. The rest go on to college or upper school." "All your population?" "With that exception." "Free?" "Of course. and they pass out of college at 18. There are several different college courses, but one or other must be followed, and a satisfactory examination passed at the end. Perhaps 10% fail, and the rule requires that the candidate for the samurai must have passed. But a very good man is sometimes an idle schoolboy. We admit that, and so anyone who has failed to pass the college leaving examination may at any time in his later life sit for it again, and again, and again. Certain carefully specified things excuse it altogether. Well, that makes it fair, but aren't there people who cannot pass examinations? People of nervous instability, but they may be the people of great though irregular poetic gifts. Exactly. That is quite possible, but we don't want that sort of people among our samurai. Passing an examination is a proof of a certain steadiness of purpose, a certain self-control and submission, of a certain ordinariness. Exactly what is wanted. Of course, those others can follow other careers. Yes, that's what we want them to do. And besides these two educational qualifications, there are others of a similar kind of more debatable value. One is practically not in operation now. Our founders put it that a candidate for the samurai must possess what they call a technique, and, as it operated in the beginning, he had to hold the qualification for a doctor, for a lawyer, for a military officer, or an engineer, or teacher, or have painted acceptable pictures, or written a book, or something of that sort. He had, in fact, as people say, to be something, or to have done something. It was a regulation of vague intention even in the beginning, and it became catholic to the pitch of absurdity. To play a violin skillfully has been accepted as sufficient for this qualification. There may have been a reason in the past for this provision. In those days there were many daughters of prosperous parents, and even some sons, who did nothing whatever but idle uninterestingly in the world, and the organization might have suffered by their invasion, but that reason is gone now, and the requirement remains a merely ceremonial requirement. But, on the other hand, another has developed. Our founders made a collection of several volumes, which they called collectively the Book of the Samurai, a compilation of articles and extracts, poems and prose pieces, which were supposed to embody the idea of the order. It was to play the part for the samurai that the Bible did for the ancient Hebrews. To tell you the truth, the stuff was of very unequal merit. There was a lot of very second-rate rhetoric, and some nearly namby-pamby verse. There were also included some very obscure verse and prose that had the trick of seeming wise. But, for all such defects, much of the book, from the very beginning, was splendid and inspiring matter. From that time to this, the Book of the Samurai has been under revision. Much has been added, much rejected, and some deliberately rewritten. Now there's hardly anything in it that is not beautiful and perfect in form. The whole range of noble emotions finds expression there, and all the guiding ideas of our modern state. We have recently emitted some terse criticism of its contents by a man named Henley. Old Henley! A man who died a little time ago. I knew that man on Earth, and he was in Utopia too. He was a great red-faced man with fiery hair, a noisy, intolerant maker of enemies, with a tender heart. And he was one of the samurai? He defied the rules. He was a great man with wine. He wrote like wine. In our world he wrote wine, red wine with the light shining through. He was on the committee that revised our canon. For the revising and bracing of our canon is work for poetic as well as kinetic men. You knew him in your world? I wish I had. But I have seen him. On Earth he wrote a thing. It would run, "Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul." We have that here. All good earthly things are in Utopia also. We put that in the canon almost as soon as he died, said my double. Section 5. We have now a double canon, a very fine first canon, and a second canon of work by living men and work of inferior quality, and a satisfactory knowledge of both of these is the fourth intellectual qualification for the samurai. It must keep a sort of uniformity in your tone of thought. The canon pervades our whole world. As a matter of fact, very much of it is read and learnt in the schools. Next to the intellectual qualifications come the physical. The man must be in sound health, free from certain foul, avoidable, and demoralizing diseases, and in good training. We reject men who are fat, or thin, and flabby, or whose nerves are shaky. We refer them back to training. And finally the man or woman must be fully adult. 21? But you said 25. The age has varied. At first it was 25 or over, then the minimum became 25 for men and 21 for women. Now there is a feeling that it ought to be raised. We don't want to take advantage of mere boy and girl emotions. Men of my way of thinking at any rate don't. We want to get our samurai with experiences, with a settled, mature conviction. Our hygiene and regiment are rapidly pushing back old age and death, and keeping men hale and hearty to 80 and more. There's no need to hurry the young. Let them have a chance of wine, love, and song. Let them feel the bite of full-bodied desire, and know what devils they have to reckon with. But there is a certain fine sort of youth that knows the desirability of better things at 19. They may keep the rule at any time, without its privileges. But a man who breaks the rule after his adult adhesion at 25 is no more in the samurai forever. Before that age, he is free to break it and repent. And now, what is forbidden? We forbid a good deal. Many small pleasures do no great harm, but we think it well to forbid them nonetheless, so that we can weed out the self-indulgent. We think that a constant resistance to little seductions is good for a man's quality. At any rate, it shows that a man is prepared to pay something for his honor and privileges. We prescribe a regimen of food, forbid tobacco, wine, or any alcoholic drink, all narcotic drugs. Meat? In all the round world of Utopia there is no meat. There used to be, but now we cannot stand the thought of slaughterhouses. And in a population that is all educated, and about the same level of physical refinement, it is practically impossible to find anyone who will hew a dead ox or pig. We never settled the hygienic question of meat eating at all. This other aspect decided us. I can still remember, as a boy, the rejoicings over the closings of the last slaughterhouse. You eat fish? It isn't a matter of logic. In our barbaric past, horrible flayed carcasses of brutes dripping blood were hung for sale in the public streets. He shrugged his shoulders. They do that still in London, in my world, I said. He looked again at my laxer, coarser face, and did not say whatever thought had passed across his mind. Originally, the samurai were forbidden usury, that is to say, the lending of money at fixed rates of interest. They are still under that interdiction, but since our commercial code practically prevents usury altogether, and our law will not recognize contracts for interest upon private accommodation loans to unprosperous borrowers, it is now scarcely necessary. The idea of a man growing richer by mere inaction and at the expense of an impoverishing debtor is profoundly distasteful to utopian ideas, and our state insists pretty effectually now upon the participation of the lender in the borrower's risks. This, however, is only one part of a series of limitations of the same character. It is felt that to buy simply in order to sell again brings out many unsocial human qualities. It makes a man seek to enhance profits and falsify values, and so the samurai are forbidden to buy, to sell on their own account, or for any employer save the state, unless some process of manufacture changes the nature of the commodity. A mere change in bulk or packaging does not suffice, and they are forbidden salesmanship and all its arts. Consequently, they cannot be hotel keepers, or hotel proprietors, or hotel shareholders, and a doctor, all practicing doctors must be samurai, cannot sell drugs except as a public servant of the municipality of the state. Well, that, of course, runs counter to all our current terrestrial ideas, I said. We are obsessed by the power of money. These rules will work out as a vow of moderate poverty, and if your samurai are an order of poor men, they need not be. Samurai who have invented, organized, and developed new industries have become rich men, and many men who have grown rich by brilliant and original trading have subsequently become samurai. But these are exceptional cases. The bulk of your money-making business must be confined to men who are not samurai. You must have a class of rich, powerful outsiders. Have we? I don't see the evidences of them. As a matter of fact, we have such people. There are rich traders, men who have made discoveries in the economy of distribution, or who have called attention by intelligent, truthful advertisement to the possibilities of neglected commodities, for example. But aren't they in power? Why should they be? Wealth is power. I had to explain that phrase. He protested. Wealth, he said, is no sort of power at all unless you make it one. If it is so in your world, it is so by inadvertency. Wealth is a state-made thing, a convention, the most artificial of powers. You can, by subtle statesmanship, contrive what it shall buy and what it shall not. In your world, it would seem you have made leisure, movement, any sort of freedom, life itself, purchasable. The more fools you! A poor working man with you is a man in discomfort and fear. No wonder your rich have power. But here, reasonable leisure, a decent life, is to be had by every man on easier terms than by selling himself to the rich. And rich as men are here, there is no private fortune in the whole world that is more than a little thing beside the wealth of the state. The samurai control the state and the wealth of the state, and by their vows they may not avail themselves of any of the coarser pleasures wealth can still buy. Where, then, is the power of your wealthy man? But then, where is the incentive? Oh, a man gets things for himself with wealth, no end of things, but little or no power over his fellows, unless they are exceptionally weak or self-indulgent persons. I reflected. What else may not the samurai do? Acting, singing, or reciting are forbidden them, though they may lecture authoritatively or debate. But professional mimicry is not only held to be undignified in a man or woman, but to weaken and corrupt the soul. The mind becomes foolishly dependent on applause, over-skillful in producing tawdry and momentary illusions of excellence. It is our experience that actors and actresses are a class of loud, ignoble, and insincere. If they have not such flamboyant qualities, then they are tepid and ineffectual players. Nor may the samurai do personal services, except in the matter of medicine or surgery. They may not be barbers, for example, nor inn-waiters, nor boot-cleaners. But nowadays we have scarcely any barbers or boot-cleaners. Men do these things for themselves. Nor may a man under the rule be any man's servant, pledged to do whatever he is told. He may neither be a servant nor keep one. He must shave and dress and serve himself, carry his own food from the helper's place to the table, redd his sleeping room, and leave it clean. That is all easy enough in a world as ordered as yours. I suppose no samurai may bet? Absolutely not. He may insure his life and his old age for the better equipment of his children, or for certain other specified ends, but that is all his dealings with chance. And he is also forbidden to play games in public, or to watch them being played. Certain dangerous and hardy sports and exercises are prescribed for him, but not competitive sports between man and man or side and side. That lesson was learned long ago before the coming of the samurai. Gentlemen of honor, according to the old standards, rode horses, raced chariots, fought, and played competitive games of skill, and the dull, cowardly, and base came in thousands to admire and howl and bet. The gentleman of honor degenerated fast enough into a sort of athletic prostitute, with all the defects, all the vanity, trickery, and self-assertion of the common actor, and with even less intelligence. Our founders made no peace with this organization of public sports. They did not spend their lives to secure for all men and women on earth freedom, health, and leisure, in order that they might waste lives in such folly. We have those abuses, I said, but some of our earthly games have a fine side. There is a game called cricket. It is a fine, generous game. Our boys play that, and men too, but it is thought rather puerile to give very much time to it. Men should have graver interests. It was undignified and unpleasant for the samurai to play conspicuously ill, and impossible for them to play so constantly as to keep hand and eye in training against the man who was fool enough and cheap enough to become an expert. Cricket, tennis, fives, billiards, you will find clubs and a class of men to play all these things in Utopia, but not the samurai. And they must play their games as games, not as displays. The price of a privacy for playing cricket, so that they could charge for admission, would be overwhelmingly high. Negroes are often very clever at cricket. For a time, most of the samurai had their sword play, but few do those exercises now, and until about 50 years ago they went out for military training, a fortnight in every year, marching long distances, sleeping in the open, carrying provisions, and sham-fighting over unfamiliar ground dotted with disappearing targets. There was a curious inability in our world to realize that war was really over for good and all. And now, I said, haven't we got very nearly to the end of your prohibitions? You have forbidden alcohol, drugs, smoking, betting, and usury, games, trade, servants. But isn't there a vow of chastity? That is a rule for your earthly orders? Yes, except if I remember correctly, for Plato's guardians. There is a rule of chastity here, but not of celibacy. We know quite clearly that civilization is an artificial arrangement, and that all the physical and emotional instincts of man are too strong, and his natural instinct of restraint too weak for him to live easily in the civilized state. Civilizations have developed far more rapidly than man has modified. Under the unnatural perfection of security, liberty, and abundance our civilization has attained, the normal, untrained human being is disposed to excess in almost every direction. He tends to eat too much and too elaborately, to drink too much, to become lazy faster than his work can be reduced, to waste his interest upon displays, and to make love too much and too elaborately. He gets out of training and concentrates upon egoistic or erotic broodings. The past history of our race is very largely a history of social collapse due to demoralization by indulgences following security and abundance. In the time of our founders, the signs of a worldwide epoch of prosperity and relaxation were plentiful. Both sexes drifted toward sexual excesses, the men toward sentimental extravagances, imbecile devotions, and the complication and refinement of physical indulgences. The women towards those expansions and differentiations of feelings that find expression in music and costly and distinguished dress. Both sexes became unstable and promiscuous. The whole world seemed disposed to do exactly the same thing with its sexual interest as it had done with its appetite for food and drink. Make the most of it. He paused. Satiety came to help you, I said. Destruction may come before satiety. Our founders organized motives from all sorts of sources, but I think the chief force to give men self-control is pride. Pride may not be the noblest thing in the soul, but it is the best king there, for all that. They looked at it to keep a man clean and sound and sane. In this matter, as in all matters of natural desire, they held no appetite must be glutted, no appetite must have artificial whets, and also, and equally, that no appetite should be starved. A man must come from the table satisfied, but not replete, and in the matter of love, a straight and clean desire for a clean and straight fellow creature was our founders' ideal. They enjoined marriage between equals as the samurai's duty to the race, and they framed directions of the precisest sort to prevent that uxorious inseparableness, that connubiality which will reduce a couple of people to something jointly less than either. That canon is too long to tell you now. A man under the rule who loves a woman who does not follow it must either leave the samurai to marry her, or induce her to accept what is called the woman's rule, which, while it accepts her from the severe qualifications and disciplines, brings her regimen of life into a working harmony with his. Suppose she breaks the rule afterward? He must leave either her or the order. There is matter for a novel or so on that. There has been matter for hundreds. Is the woman's rule a sumptuary law as well as a regimen? I mean, may she dress as she pleases? Not a bit of it, said my double. Every woman who could command money used it, we found, to make underbred aggressions on other women. As men emerged to civilization, women seemed going back to savagery, to paint and feathers. But the samurai, both men and women, and the women under the lesser rule also, all have a particular dress. No difference is made between women under either the great or the lesser rule. You've seen the men's dress, always like this I wear. The women may wear the same, either with the hair cut short or plaited behind them, or they may have a high-waisted dress of very fine, soft woolen material, with their hair coiled up behind. I have seen it, I said. Indeed, nearly all the women had seemed to be wearing variants of that simple formula. It seems to me a very beautiful dress. The other... I'm not used to it, but I like it on girls and slender women. I had a thought and added, don't they sometimes, well, take a good deal of care dressing their hair? My double laughed in his eyes. They do, he said. And the rule? The rule is never fussy, said my double, still smiling. We don't want women to cease to be beautiful, and consciously beautiful if you like, he added. The more real beauty of form and face we have, the finer our world. But costly, sexualized trappings... I should have thought, I said, a class of women who traded on their sex would have risen. Women, I mean, who found an interest and an advantage in emphasizing their individual womanly beauty. There is no law to prevent it. Surely they would tend to counteract the severity of costume the rule dictates. There are such women. But for all that, the rule sets the key of everyday dress. If a woman is possessed by the passion for gorgeous raiment, she usually satisfies it in her own private circle, or with rare occasional onslaughts upon the public eye. Her everyday mood and the disposition of most people is against being conspicuous abroad. And I should say there are little liberties under the lesser rule, a discreet use of fine needlework and embroidery, a wider choice of materials." "You have no changing fashions?" "None. For all that, are not our dresses as beautiful as ours?" "Our women's dresses are not beautiful at all," I said, forced for a time towards the mysterious philosophy of dress. "Beauty? That isn't their concern." "Then what are they after?" "My dear man, what is all my world after?" End chapter 9, sections 4 and 5.